Crimes have a way of creeping into our lives when we least expect them, turning ordinary days into nightmares. Imagine going about your day, maybe with exciting plans ahead, only to have it all ripped away by someone with dark intentions. That's exactly what happened in today's case, a heartbreaking story of a brilliant young woman whose future was tragically stolen. This case gripped the nation with its disturbing details and media coverage. Today we'll be delving into the murder of Annie Mary Lay. The discovery of Annie Lay's body was the turning point in a chilling investigation that gripped Yale University and the nation. It was September 13th, 2009, 5 days after Annie had gone missing. Authorities had scoured the campus, following every possible lead, but it wasn't until detectives caught the unmistakable scent of decomposition in the basement of 10 Amistad Street that they realized the nightmare was far worse than they had imagined. Cadaver dogs were brought in, and they quickly zeroed in on a hidden space. Around 5 p.m., detectives found Annie's body in a mechanical chase, concealed behind a wall near the toilet. The space was incredibly tight, only about 8 inches deep, with water pipes running vertically and horizontally. A metal sheet the size of a computer screen covered the area where she was found, and her body had been horrifically compressed to fit between the pipes. Her bones were crushed. The state medical examiner later determined that Annie had died from traumatic asphyxiation due to neck compression. The autopsy revealed more grim details. Her collarbone and jaw had been broken while she was still alive, and she had been sexually assaulted. Her underwear had been pulled down to her ankles, her bra was pushed up, and semen was found on her body and clothing. The discovery shocked the Yale community, but the investigation had already been unfolding for days. Annie had been reported missing on September 8th after failing to return home that evening. Her friends and housemates were immediately alarmed, knowing that Annie, a cautious and responsible person, would never stay out late without telling someone. Her personal belongings, her wallet, phone, and credit cards had all been left behind in her office, adding to the growing concern. Police quickly began tracing Annie's movements. Security footage showed her entering the lab building at 10 Amistad Street around 10 a.m. on the morning of her disappearance, but she was never seen leaving. That was the first clue that something terrible had happened inside. Investigators combed through the building, but it wasn't until they examined room G13, a lab where Annie had been working, that things began to fall into place. Ray Clark, a lab technician responsible for maintaining the lab, immediately became a person of interest. He had a reputation for being strict about cleanliness, often complaining to students who left messes behind. In fact, it was later revealed that he had emailed Annie, accusing her of leaving dirty mouse cages in the lab. On the day Annie disappeared, Ray was seen acting strangely. He had been spotted moving a pushcart with a box of blood-stained wipes. Even more suspicious, he was seen cleaning a drain in G13, despite the fact that the drain didn't appear to need cleaning. When questioned, Ray claimed to have seen Annie leave the building at around 12:30 p.m., but security footage and the physical evidence told a different story. Before we dive deeper into the crime, let's take a moment to get to know both Annie and her killer. Annie Marie Lay was born and raised in San Jose, California, in a Vietnamese-American household. Though details about her early life are scarce, we know that she was brought up by her aunt and uncle. At Union Mine High School in El Dorado, California, Annie was a standout student, voted most likely to be the next Einstein, and graduating as valedictorian. Her intelligence and drive earned her a $160,000 scholarship to the University of Rochester in New York, where she majored in cell developmental biology and minored in medical anthropology. Annie wasn't just brilliant, she was humble and kind, always pushing herself to do more, but never losing her down-to-earth nature. Her teachers, staff, and classmates all spoke of her in glowing terms, describing her as an exceptionally gifted woman with a bright academic future. At the time of her murder, Annie was a PhD candidate in pharmacology at Yale. She was also planning her wedding to her fiancé, Jonathan Wadowski, in September 2009, but tragically, she never made it to that special day. Now let's talk about Raymond Clark. Not much is known about his upbringing, but friends and acquaintances from his past described him as quiet, competitive, and polite, especially to elders. However, those descriptions don't hide the darker side of his character, particularly in his relationships with women. During high school, his girlfriend once called the police on him for abusive behavior. And in 2003, he was investigated by local authorities in Brantford after another girlfriend claimed he had forced her into sex and that she feared for her safety if she tried to end the relationship. At the time of the crime, Ray Clark worked as a lab technician at Yale, responsible for cleaning and maintaining the lab that Annie Lay and other students used for research. He had a reputation for being strict, especially when it came to keeping the lab clean. He didn't appreciate students leaving behind messes, as it created extra work for him. And unfortunately, Annie was one of those students who had gotten on his nerves. Now, let's talk about the day it all happened. On the morning of September 8th, 2009, Annie left her apartment early, catching a ride on Yale Transit to the Sterling Hall of Medicine. From there, she made her way to her research lab, located in a separate building at 10 Amistad Street. It was just after 10 a.m. when she entered the building, as captured by the building's security cameras. As the day went on, Annie's housemates started to get worried. They had expected her to return home at the end of the school day, but hours passed with no sign of her. Repeated attempts to reach her phone went unanswered. At first, they tried to brush it off, thinking maybe she was just caught up in her research. But as the night crept in, their concern grew, especially since Annie had a habit of never going out alone at night and always arranged for someone to pick her up if she was staying late at the lab. By 9 p.m., their unease turned into panic, and they reported her missing to the police. When the police arrived at her lab, they found her personal belongings still there, untouched. She had left behind her wallet, phone, credit cards, and cash in Sterling Hall, which was unusual for someone like Annie, who was typically very organized. It seemed like she had left the lab, planning to return shortly after, but she never did. The investigation quickly turned to the building's security footage. While CCTV can't always tell the full story, the footage from that morning showed nothing out of the ordinary. Annie appeared calm as she entered the Amistad Street building. She wasn't running, she wasn't in distress, and nobody approached her. Everything about her behavior seemed routine. However, there was one unsettling detail. Once she entered the basement level, she vanished from view. The only camera covering that area didn't capture her leaving or passing by the door. Things took a darker turn later that day when Rachel Roth, Annie's postdoctoral fellow in pharmacology, approached the police with something chilling. She had found a steel pushcart in room G13 and handed the officers a box of Y-ball hygiene wipes spattered with what appeared to be blood. This discovery set off alarm bells, and the police immediately called in the FBI. While waiting for the FBI agents to arrive, police noticed something strange. Ray Clark, the lab technician, had been going in and out of room G13 multiple times that day, almost as if he was in a rush. Ray's behavior on the day of Annie's disappearance was increasingly suspicious. At one point, he was seen approaching the pushcart where the blood-spattered wipes were found. He casually moved the wipes box from one side to the other, twisting it to hide the bloodstains from view. Then he told police he had seen Annie leaving the building at 12:30 p.m., but there was a glaring problem with his story. Annie never left the building, and police had noticed multiple scratches on Ray's face and arms. On the day Annie went missing, a fire alarm had gone off in the building, causing an evacuation. However, one technician, Ray, remained in room G13, going in and out of the lab at least 55 times. The police suspected Ray had been using multiple access cards, including his own, to move freely around the building. Yet, despite all of this suspicious behavior, they didn't have enough evidence to make an arrest. By September 12, the building had officially been designated a crime scene. The investigation ramped up, and authorities collected around 250 pieces of evidence. Among them were the blood-stained white ball box and an oversized lab coat with crimson stains found in a recycling bin at 10 Amistad. Along with that, they discovered a blue hospital scrub top, a white sock, a pair of Viking work boots labeled Ray C, and a blood-stained rubber glove. The evidence was mounting. On September 15th, police obtained a warrant to collect DNA and other samples from Ray, including mouth swabs, body hair, fingerprints, and fingernail clippings. The DNA results were damning. Annie's and Ray's DNA were found together on a sock, and Lay's blood was discovered on a pen, with Ray's DNA on both the barrel and inside the cap. Over the next few days, more bloodstains and hair fibers were found in multiple lab rooms, tightening the net around Ray. Finally, on September 17th, Ray Clark was arrested for the murder of Annie Lay. Authorities had been monitoring a hotel about 25 miles north of New Haven, where Ray was staying. By the time the police arrived, the scene was buzzing with reporters, eager to capture an image of the man now believed to be a cold-blooded murderer. At 8:36 a.m., Ray was taken into custody without incident, marking the end of a frantic search for answers in a case that had captivated the nation. Following his arrest, Ray Clark was detained at the MacDougall Walker Correctional Institute on a $3 million bail. When he appeared in Connecticut Superior Court on October 6, 2009, he didn't enter a plea, and it wasn't until January 26, 2010 that he officially pled not guilty. His pretrial hearing was scheduled for March 3rd, and as strange as it may seem, Ray had supporters present in the courtroom. His sister and about 6 others sat silently in the audience, and when Ray entered, he looked at them, raised his eyebrows as a greeting, and even blew a kiss toward his parents. Ray's case dragged on and was eventually postponed until October 2010, with a follow-up hearing set for February 9, 2011. Raymond Clark was sentenced to 44 years in prison for the murder of Annie Lay. The sentencing took place in March 2011, after he pled guilty to the murder. In addition to the murder charge, Clark entered an Alford plea to the charge of attempted sexual assault, which means he acknowledged the overwhelming evidence against him, but did not admit to the sexual assault itself. Emotions ran high during Ray's sentencing. Both the Lay and Clark families were visibly upset, many crying as they sat in the courtroom. Ray himself expressed regret, apologizing for taking Annie's life. But as we all know, an apology can never bring back a loved one. Annie's mother, Vivian Lay, spoke through her tears during the sentencing, delivering a heartbreaking statement. "I will never hug Annie again. The world will never know what she had to offer," she said. She went on to express the immense pain of knowing she would never hold her grandchildren, as Annie was murdered before her wedding day. Currently, Ray is serving his sentence at Cheshire Correctional Institution, with a release date set for September 16, 2053. By then, he'll be in his 70s. Even with him behind bars, people still can't help but wonder, why did he kill her in such a brutal way? There was no sign Clark and Annie were close or had any personal relationship, but his controlling behavior at work and the complaints he had about her might have played a role in what happened that day. Still, the full story of why he did it remains a mystery. We may never really understand. Annie Marie Lay's murder is a heartbreaking tragedy. She was a brilliant young woman with so much potential, all of it stolen by one selfish act. No apology will ever mend the heartbreak of the Lay family. We can only hope that Annie is at peace now and that her family finds the strength to carry on. For those of us hearing her story, let's take it as a reminder to stay safe and cherish every moment with our loved ones. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.